My name is Ella, and I am 26 years old. 5 days before my younger sister's wedding, my mother called me and told me I was no longer invited. Not delayed, not asked to come later, not told that there had been some misunderstanding. She said, very calmly, that my name had been removed from the guest list. At first, I honestly thought I had misheard her. I was standing in my small apartment kitchen, holding a mug of coffee in one hand and staring out the window at the rain sliding down the glass. My sister's wedding was supposed to be the biggest family event of our lives. For months, my mother had talked about nothing else. The flowers, the invitations, the seating arrangements, the dress code, the private estate where the ceremony would take place, the family traditions, the guests, and most importantly, the groom's family. Because my sister, Charlotte, wasn't just getting married. She was marrying into what my mother called an old money family. That phrase had become almost secret in our house. Old money. My mother said it with a strange kind of admiration, as if the words themselves represented a world we had spent our entire lives trying to enter. Charlotte's fiancé, Alex.
I read the sentence again. Then I read it a third time. The wedding isn't really about Charlotte and Alexander. It's about me. I didn't understand what my father had meant. Not completely. But I knew one thing. My mother had been lying to me for years. Maybe my entire life. I looked at the letter in my hands and felt a strange mixture of anger and fear. My father had written it before he died. He had known something. Something about my mother. Something about Charlotte. Something about the Whitmore family. And apparently, whatever he knew was important enough that my mother had hidden his letter from me for 12 years. 12 years. I was 14 when my father died. 14. Old enough to remember his face. Old enough to remember his voice. Old enough to remember the way he used to knock on my bedroom door every morning before school. Come on, Ella, you're going to be late. I could still hear him. I could still remember the smell of his coffee, the sound of his shoes on the hardwood floor, the way he used to call me kiddo, even when I was too old for it. And I remembered the day he died. My mother had told me it was an accident, a sudden heart attack. 1 minute he was fine. The next minute, he was gone. That was the story I had believed my entire life. But now I was beginning to wonder if there was more. I continued reading. My father's handwriting.
Richard sat down at the kitchen table. My mother remained standing. She looked like she wanted to run. I couldn't blame her. For 26 years, she had apparently been carrying a secret that involved my birth, my father, the Whitmore family, and a wedding that was supposed to happen in 5 days. And now, everything was falling apart. I stood across from Richard. Start at the beginning. He nodded. Your mother and I met when we were young. I glanced at my mother. She looked away. How young? 22, Richard said. My mother quietly corrected him. 21. Richard nodded. 21. I sat down. So you were together? Yes. For how long? Almost 3 years. I looked at my mother. Why did you break up? She didn't answer. Richard did. Because my family didn't approve of her.
For several seconds, I couldn't speak. I stood in my mother's kitchen, staring at her as if she had suddenly become a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe the woman I had called Mom for 26 years had always been someone I only partially knew. My mother had hidden my biological father. She had hidden my aunt. She had hidden the truth about Charlotte. She had hidden a $40 million trust. And now, there was a man named Daniel, who was apparently connected to almost every secret in my life. A man who was supposedly dead to us. A man who was alive. A man who knew where I lived. And a man who was planning to attend my sister's wedding. I looked at Richard. Why would Daniel be invited to the wedding? Richard's expression was grim. He shouldn't be. Then why is he? I don't know. I turned toward my mother. How did he get an invitation?
I didn't open the door. Not immediately. I stood there with my hand hovering inches from the handle, listening to the silence on the other side. My mother was behind me. Richard was near the windows. And outside stood Charlotte, my sister. Or at least, the woman I had believed was my sister for 26 years. Beside her was Daniel, the man who had threatened me. The man my mother claimed had killed her sister. The man who had supposedly disappeared. The man who knew about my trust. The man who knew about my father's death. And now they were standing together outside my mother's house. I slowly stepped away from the door. "Don't open it," my mother whispered again. I looked at her. "Why?" She shook her head. "I don't know. That's not good enough. Please, Ella." I looked at Richard. "Do you have a gun?" Richard's eyes widened. "No." "Anything?" "No." "Then what exactly are we supposed to do?" Richard walked toward the door.
I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph. My father, my mother, Richard, Evelyn, and the mysterious figure in the background. Then I saw Charlotte's messages. "Don't go to the church tomorrow. It's a trap. Daniel knows about the key." I kept reading them over and over. The obvious thing would have been to stay home, to lock the doors, to call the police, to let someone else handle the situation. But after 26 years of lies, I had finally reached the point where I couldn't walk away. I needed answers. I needed to know what happened to my father. I needed to know why my mother had lied to me. I needed to know why Charlotte had tried to take control of my trust. And most importantly, I needed to know why everyone seemed terrified of Daniel. At 6:30 the next morning, I got out of bed. I took a shower. I changed into jeans, a sweater, and a long coat. Then I stood in front of the mirror. For the first time in my life, I looked at myself differently. I wasn't the little girl who had lost her father. I wasn't the younger woman who had spent years trying to earn her mother's approval. I wasn't the sister who had been pushed out of a wedding 5 days before it happened. I was Ella, 26 years old, and I had finally decided to stop being afraid. I walked into the living room. Richard was already awake. He had spent the night on the couch. My mother was sitting in the kitchen. Neither of them looked like they had slept. Richard stood when he saw me.
For several seconds, nobody moved. Daniel stood at the back of the church with the confidence of a man who believed he had finally won. My mother was crying. Evelyn looked like she might collapse. Richard was staring at Daniel with an expression I had never seen before. And I couldn't stop thinking about one sentence. The real heir is standing right here. Me, Ella, 26 years old. The daughter who had been uninvited from her own sister's old money wedding. The daughter who had been told she wasn't important enough to belong. The daughter who had spent her entire life believing her family was ordinary. And now, Daniel was telling me that I was connected to the original Whitmore fortune. I looked at him. "You're lying." He smiled. "Ask them." I turned toward Richard. "Is it true?" Richard didn't answer.
6 months after the wedding that never happened, my life looked completely different. For the first time in 26 years, I wasn't running from my family. I wasn't trying to understand why I had been abandoned. I wasn't wondering why my mother had hidden the truth. And I wasn't asking myself why my father had disappeared. I finally knew everything. The man I had believed was dead was alive. The man I had believed was my father wasn't my biological father. The man I had trusted to protect my family had betrayed us. And the sister I had once believed was my enemy turned out to be the person who needed